Today, harnessing your negotiation powers with agents. Hello again, it's Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics, one that is post covering finance and property news. Well, of course, if you are thinking of employing a real estate agent to sell your property, a lot of the conversation is about price. But what about the fees? Now, I want to introduce someone today who has an idea about how you can begin to negotiate more strongly with fees. Introduce Aaron Scott. Hi, Aaron. How are you going?
Hello, Martin. You're doing really well. How are you?
Yeah, very good. Great to have you on. And you've been cooking up a bit of a plot here to help people get better value from the real estate agents, which I think is pretty neat.
Yeah, thanks very much, Martin. We know that a lot of the conversation revolves around helping people buy properties, and I think you cover a lot of that, and you spoke to Edwin about that obviously each Monday, and there's a lot of discussion on even whether people should buy, to be quite frank. Given that lending conditions are relatively tight, uncertainty around jobs and things like that. I guess what we tend to focus on is not so much the buying side, but as you mentioned just a moment ago, the selling side, and actually helping people save money when they're selling their property.
Yeah, very interesting. And that's actually quite an important part of the story, isn't it? Because if you're a vendor and you're thinking potentially of putting your property on the market, obviously part of the question is, what is the agent going to tell me about what it's worth? But the other question is, what are the fees that you're going to charge me? And there is actually quite significant variations between fees from different agents.
Absolutely right. And I think that most people underestimate actually how expensive it is to sell their property. It's very easy to say, okay, well, I think this is what it's worth, and I know how much I still owe on my mortgage, and therefore I'm walking away from the distance, but with the difference. But I think that a lot of people get shocked just by how much they do end up giving up in fees, whether it's capital gains tax or whether it's an agent's commission, property styling, getting the house ready for presenting to the market. And I'm not suggesting that any of those things are not important and that they can't actually add value to the sale price of your property, but it is an expensive business to sell, and there's a lot of costs that you can't control, but there's equally a lot of costs that you can control, and that's where we try and help people out when they're selling.
Yeah, very interesting. And I guess the other question here is, are all agents going to behave equally ethically and also equally actively around selling a property? So I wonder to what extent it's also important to understand how many properties they've sold and you know, the results that they've achieved, as well as part of the story.
Absolutely. And there's a lot of services already out there that can tell you that, how many properties in the local area the agent sold, and even sort of how many 5-star ratings that they have. And those might be good sources of information and data points. But in and of themselves, they don't really answer the question, well, how much is it going to cost me when I'm selling? I know that you've sold places down the street, and that's really good. But what's it going to cost me? And how flexible are you with your commission rate and things like that?
Right, okay. So you've developed a bit of a system here, and it's being rolled out at the moment. So why don't we take a look?
Yeah, sure. So I thought we might run through a bit of a presentation this evening, and I've titled it Mortgage Stress and Bride Agent Helping Aussies in Tough Selling Conditions. We're not just a service to help people in mortgage stress, but I think focusing on that as an important social issue at the moment, and certainly recognising that people in mortgage stress do need to save as much money as they can. That might be a good case study for us to walk through exactly what Bride Agent does and how we can help you save money. I know you love figures, Martin, and I'm sure the rest of your followers do as well. And so I thought I'd start with some statistics around mortgage stress. These have come from CBA themselves. We know that Commonwealth Bank is Australia's largest bank and also holds the largest number of retail loans, about 800,000 with CBA. And we also know, or at least Roy Morgan's estimate, that 30% of Australian mortgage holders are in mortgage stress at the moment, and therefore 240,000 Commonwealth Bank mortgage holders are experiencing mortgage stress, at least according to the Roy Morgan's estimate. And yet in the bank's own end of financial year results that they published, and I think they get published in November each year, and so we're probably pretty close to the next set of full year results, there was only 0.5% of their mortgages which were past due. Now, I know that we can take different definitions of exactly what constitutes mortgage stress. And one of the points you regularly make is that banks don't necessarily hold all the picture. And so just because the Commonwealth Bank think that only 0.5% of their mortgage holders are past due and maybe in stress, I think the real figure is more likely closer to the Roy Morgan's estimate when you take into account that people might have other mortgages that obviously should be declared between banks. They might have other debts and other loans even in other names, and just generally struggling to keep up with the cost of doing business. But I thought it really interesting, and I personally, Martin, struggled to reconcile here how on one hand there should be 240,000 Commonwealth Bank mortgages on the books that are in mortgage stress, and yet the bank's own figures show a much smaller number of those. It's really only sort of 1.6% of the figures you'd expect.
Yeah, well, I just may add on that. So obviously the past due means that they're actually in default. They've missed a payment. Now, when I measure mortgage stress, I look at it much further up the value chain there. So have people got enough cash flow to be able to cover their outgoings, including their mortgage or indeed rent? And so I think part of the definitional problem is a significant issue here. And of course, the banks have also been able to help people refinance and extend their mortgages and go interest only. So use a range of tactics, frankly, to in a way mask some of the pressure. The trouble is, ASIC recently reported, even if you have a hardship scheme with a bank for a period of time, at the end of that scheme, you've probably still got a problem. And at the end of the day, you may well need to do something. And of course, people don't want to get into the final arrears stage. So quite a few people are looking to sell their property before they actually default, which is why it's so important then to make good decisions about which agent you actually go with.
Yes. And I suspect as well, even something like looking at the definition of an impaired loan, that being a loan that's in breach of its original conditions and original contract, you could very easily issue a new contract and suddenly that loan is no longer impaired or no longer in breach. And so I certainly agree. And I'm sure that the banks are very forward-leaning in promoting these as good behaviours. But to your last point there, that doesn't necessarily change the amount of cash in somebody's pockets or the fact that they might be needing a bit more help than simply changing the terms in their contract and saying, okay, you're good to go.
Spot on, and just make the point there that the Reserve Bank actually has quite a nice little chart. I'll put it up to show there's a difference between the initial problem with cash flow management into effectively defaults and delinquency. And, the banks always want to say nothing to see here, it's a small number, whereas actually I believe it's a bigger number and growing number. And therefore, this is a really important issue.
Just to show that it's not just, CBA, of course, I pulled some figures for National Bank, obviously a much smaller market share, but the point really to this, as we've just been discussing, is there's a huge discrepancy. Roy Morgan's is estimating is the number of people in mortgage stress and using a really high proportion of their income to service their loans. And what the banks are showing in terms of the number of people that they consider to be at risk in their loan arrangements. And I really struggle to rationalise and reconcile these numbers. And I know that's something you talk about quite often is what is happening here? How can it be, on one hand, we should be expecting 134,000 NAB mortgages to be in some degree of trouble, and yet the banks are only reporting a very, very small number to actually be the case. And I don't think the answer is respondable lending laws necessarily, and that the fact that hundreds of thousands of people are magically protected. This is something that you touched on a couple of points a second ago, Martin. Aussies, I think, are jumping ship. Aussie, we tend to like debt, we like property, we like mortgages, but we're also very, very smart people, and I think a lot of people can recognise that the writing's on the wall as well. These are just a few reasons I believe that we're not seeing those really high numbers of people in mortgage stress translate into actual defaults on their loan. Banks are offering repayment holidays. I think the word holiday is quite misleading. I don't think anything could be further from the truth in terms of a repayment holiday. Refinancing, of course, as you just mentioned, people getting out early as well. Selling at a loss. Selling at a loss will not appear as a default, but it is absolutely going to hurt your back pocket. It's absolutely going to hurt your chances of being able to buy another property in the future. People are downsizing, of course. Maybe you don't need a house that's quite as close to the city as you thought you did. Equally, maybe you don't need a house that's as close to the country. And downsizing is not just the number of bedrooms in a house. It can be how far in or out from the city centres you're moving as well. Taking on more debt, I think, is a really interesting one as well. And I saw an article. I think it was Channel 7 in Adelaide this week, talking about green loans and the fact that if you go and outlay the capital for panels and batteries and basically achieve a 7-star energy rating on your house, you may qualify for a green loan, and that could be a slightly cheaper rate. And I thought, firstly, you're asking people to outlay a large amount of capital to reinvest it into their property, and then what happens when the poor lady loses her job or something happens and there's a workplace injury and you're not able to work, and you've just outlaid all this money expecting that you ride that wave of savings into the future and something happens to you. And I think encouraging people to take on more debt as a way of getting out of their current debt is quite concerning. And then finally, I guess on the other side of the ledger, perhaps there's a bit more caution on entry, and you're not seeing as many people defaulting on loans because there's a few more people being cautious on the loans they get into and how much they can service, and making sure that their job is secure and not doing anything too risky. And I'd like to think that's the case for new loans being taken out. But I think my point in summary in all of this is Aussies are jumping ship, and often that's happening at a loss. You'll see news reports, people banking sort of several $100,000 on their property on the way out, and sort of earning $1,000 a day in Brisbane or whatever it is. And others just talking about how much money people are losing essentially on trying to sell places, not being able to, and eventually when they do get out, they've incurred a loss in some way or another. And usually those figures that you see and take into account any capital gains tax that might be incurred.
And interestingly, the fact is that people often come late to the sale. In other words, they try to do everything they can to keep the balls in the air. And what I find in my surveys quite often is that households are actually unable ultimately to hold property and then have to do something and get forced into it. Whereas a bit more forward planning and doing things earlier potentially would make things somewhat easier. Although, of course, it's always complicated. So what's the solution then?
All right, Martin, so let's get into it. So I think that Australians really need to reduce their costs when selling. Your largest cost if you're selling, and there is a capital gain, of course, and it's investment property, not a principal place of residence, is likely to be your capital gains tax. And let's face it, you can't readily cheat the tax man. Your second largest cost is likely to be your agent's commission. And there's actually quite a lot that you can do about this in terms of being able to work and adjust and negotiate that commission rate. And when we really get into it, that's exactly what Bright Agent does. We're a service that helps people negotiate lower commission rates. I just put a little table you can see there. Median value of a Sydney sort of property at 1.6 million there, or a Sydney house, I should say. If you're talking about a base commission rate of about 2.5%, you're up for about $40,000 in commission rate. And if we can achieve about a 20% reduction on that rate and bring that down to 2%, you can see right in the right-hand column there, that's a saving of over $8,000 just simply by getting your commission rate reduced from 2.5 to 2%. Nothing else, same agent, same property, same selling price, smaller commission, and that's real savings going back into your pocket. And so I guess I'll sort of step through how we go about that, how we achieve that, and really how we came up with Bright Agent as a service. If traditionally speaking, if you needed 5 quotes for people to sell your property, you'd probably have to take 5 days off work. Maybe if you're lucky and you could get agents to all arrive on the same day, that might be less. You'd open up your house 5 times, of course, and have them walk through. You'd probably wait about 5 days for an appraisal and some comparisons as well. Nobody tends to give you that just on the spot, of course. And then when you do get them, really, you're comparing apples and oranges. And what I mean by that, and I did a little sort of example on the side here. So if the first agent says, look, I think your apartment will sell for $1 million, I'll sell it for 2.5%. It works out to $25,000 commission for them. And so you pocket $975,000, and that's all well and good. The second agent come along and says, you know what, I think you can get $1.1 million for your apartment, and I charge 3.5% commission. You're left with this thought, okay, well, which is a better deal? The second one would be $38,500 in commission, but you're also going to pocket more as well. You're going to pocket sort of $1,061,000 there. So, great, that's an extra $86,500 for you. But it actually doesn't work out to be the case. If that apartment still only sells for $1 million, even though the agent said he thought you could get 1.1 out of it, you're still up for that 3.5% commission that you've agreed to. And so that's ended up costing you $35,000. So you're actually out another $10,000 by not going with the first agent who only quoted you 2.5%. And so that's really what I mean there in terms of comparing apples and oranges. And we'll talk about Bright Agent in a second. I've just got that covered up by the picture on the right-hand side of your screen there. We also, our service addresses some other sort of questions and problems as well. So what if it's not a local property? What if you're in Sydney and you're selling an investment in Melbourne? Are you going to travel down there sort of for 5 different occasions? Are you going to try and stay down for a few days and get some local agents through it in that time? Of course, it can be a bit uncomfortable to try and negotiate with an agent in person and say, oh, look, can you do it for less? Can you do it for less? Can you do it for less? And again, that's what we use technology and our Bright Agent app to do. In terms of commissions and referral fees, it's not uncommon to have about a 20% referral fee. And so you typically find that if an agent knows they've got to pay that, they'll actually bump their rate up by about 20% or so. So if they would have done it for 2% commission, but they know they've got to pay a referral, well, they don't really want that to come out of their end. And so they'll quote you sort of back up to 2.5%. Probably one of the most annoying things as a consequence of the whole traditional arrangement is getting those calls sort of every 90 days or so, forever, asking you now, well, do you want to sell? Are you ready to sell? Are you ready to buy? And your personal information has essentially been given out to all of those agents that you've asked to quote for it. So just for sort of holding for suspense, I won't reveal that picture on the right just yet. What I'll do is talk about, well, what is Bright Agent then? Bright Agent is, as it says on this screen there, an app-based service. We're a prop tech service that helps Aussie homeowners who are looking to sell their property. And we help them to find local agents to compare their offers, and that is a direct apples for apples comparison, and ultimately to help them save money. We do not sell property at all. We are not real estate agents. We're a technology service. We also don't advocate for an agent-less service. I'm sure yourself, Martin, and some of your viewers have seen sort of other services that promote selling without an agent. I'm sure that can work for some people in some circumstances, but in the main, we certainly advocate for the use of an agent. I think they bring a lot of expertise to what they do. And we're also not a public listing domain. We've had people say, well, we're already selling our house. We'll just pop it on your service as well. No, we are a service for people to connect them with a real estate agent so that they can compare the agent's offers and ultimately save money. And so I'll walk you through exactly how that happens now. And that's the side-by-side comparison with the traditional service. So with us, to get 5 quotes from 5 different agents, you don't need to take a single day off work. In fact, you don't even have to open your front door. I'll take you through exactly how that happens in a moment, but essentially you'll take some pictures of your property. Don't have to worry about doing the dishes beforehand because they don't go public on the web. They just stay on our platform, and then the agents will be able to offer you their commission rates and services directly through the app. And you're able to make apples for apples comparison as well. So we have a benchmark price that you select, because I think most people know, the ballpark of what their property is going to sell for, give or take. And so all the agents' commission rates and offers are based on that benchmark price that you set. We are able to tackle some of those other sort of follow-on questions and challenges, as I mentioned as well. We're a remote service. Our first ever listing was a Sydney property developer, and they had a property up near Brisbane, and they were able to upload a couple of pictures to the app and get local agents up there near Brisbane to quote for that directly to them. The app does the negotiating for you, and I'll talk a little bit more about how that happens in a moment, but essentially we have competitive bidding between agents, and the agents are able to update their commission rate their offers based on what the other agents are offering as well, and so that essentially does the negotiating for you. There's no split commission or referral fee, so if an agent offers you 2.5% commission on your $1 million place, that'll cost you $25,000, and there's none of that, no portion of that commission comes back to us at all. I'll talk about how we get paid at the end, because that's a question that often comes up as well. And only the successful agent that you choose gets your property information, the address, your contact details as well. None of the unsuccessful agents that have put forward their commission rate bid get your personal details and are able to contact you afterwards. So that's a really good privacy feature that we've built in as well. So here's how it works. As I sort of said to start with, you tell us a couple of details about your property. There's really nothing there that you wouldn't expect to see from any of the sort of the property listing domains. A couple of pictures, whether it's a house or a townhouse, an apartment, whatever. Number of beds, baths, cars. If you want to put a little narrative in there about sort of refreshing your kitchen, you can. And then the photos are key as well, because the photos is what the agents are able to, and the rest of the property data is what they're able to make their commission rate bid off. As I said, they don't get the address there. Point number 2 there, the agents bid for the opportunity to represent the property. So they all put in their commission rate offering, what they're prepared to do it for, and if you've asked for any other services, maybe you want styling, they're able to offer a quote for that. Maybe you want online advertising only, they're able to give you their prices for that. Maybe you want sort of full-on advertising, you're able to get that as well. But only the services that you want, so there's no sort of upselling there. And then step number 3 there, you do your comparison of their commission rate. It'll show you sort of who's the least expensive, who's the most expensive. As I said, the agents also get to see that. They don't get to see exactly sort of who it is that's offering other rates. They do get to see that other agents are offering those other rates though, and then they get invited to update their offering if they'd like to make it more competitive. And as I said, those savings translate directly back to the seller. And yeah, look, price is one point of comparison and difference. We know there are others. The different agents, see their profiles, how long have they been selling, what company are they with, where are they located. All of the agents have a little biography that they put in there as well. And so you're able to have a look at that as well. But our unique selling point, I guess, for this service is the price comparison tool, and also the fact that we get the agents to competitively bid and offer great rates to the sellers there. And then ultimately that translates into to more money back in your pocket.
I guess the question is the price of the property is in the mind of the vendor, right? So the agent doesn't come and say, well, I can get you 2 million more, or, 200,000 more. Is based off what the vendor has said is the price. Is that right?
Absolutely right. So I think you used the term the other day, over quoting. An agent sort of essentially over promising on price, and as I mentioned a little bit earlier, it's really hard to do that comparison between agents if you're working on different price points as well. So we get the vendor to pick the price. It's a price estimate at the end of the day, as we know with agents pricing. Theirs is an estimate as well, and I think most people are fairly attuned to what the value is, whether they know a neighbour that's recently sold, or they're able to sort of search their own home and find out roughly what it's worth. And so we, that example you can see on the screen, sort of 800,000 to $1 million for that particular property. We pick the midpoint of that. So in that case, it'd be 900,000, and then each of the commission rates are worked off that price. So ultimately, nobody can tell you exactly what it's going to sell for. And if an agent tells you they know exactly what it's going to sell for, they're either going to buy it themselves or they're lying. But just a couple of points, I guess, in wrapping up. It's a free service for sellers to use. So as I said at the outset, there is no split commission. There is no referral fee. 100% of the savings that you, as the seller, have stay in your pocket, and that's the way we like it. Their services are available Australia-wide for both iOS and Android, so it doesn't matter what phone you have. Not a desktop service, just an app-based service, and you can download those through the App Store. As far as we know, Martin, we're the only Australian PropTech service that actively helps homeowners save money when selling. Clearly, there are other referral services that can point you in the direction of an agent. But as far as we're aware, none of those other services actually have an active component where they continually update their commission rate offering to make it more competitive and ultimately save the seller more money. And then a common question we get asked, and it's a fair question, is, well, if it's free for the sellers to use and you don't take a cut like the other referral services do, how do you get paid? And the simple and transparent answer for that is it is a subscription service for the agents. It's a very small subscription, I might add, roughly sort of 1/100th of the price of some of the large property referral services in Australia. And that's the agents pay that month in, month out, whether they are successful with a listing or not. And again, before sort of saying, well, the other services are only pay on success, I think I worked out the other day that, just one of those large sort of pay on success fees, for about that cost, you could be on our service with a sort of a single postcode catchment area for about 10 years for the same money. So we think we're a fantastic value service. A couple of last benefits, I guess. The sellers can definitely save more money when selling their property and going through Bright Agent to find their ideal agent. Like I said, we don't sell property ourselves. We will connect you with an agent, but just like going to JB Hi-Fi when you're going to buy a new TV and saying, well, can you price match that, please? We're essentially the price match service for real estate industry. And so I would encourage everybody, whether they ultimately choose an agent or not, to at least check out what commission rate offers they're able to get, and see if you can't get some amazing value on the service. We aim for, and in fact, our track record shows at the moment we're exceeding a 20% reduction in commission rate for the clients. And once you choose the agent that you want to go with on the service, they get referred your details, you get referred their details, of course, and we connect up the parties. You still go into the office, of course, and sign your arrangement, your agreement with the agent you've chosen, and they will honour that commission rate that they gave you through our service. We help mortgage holders, as I said at the outset, particularly those in mortgage stress, keep more of their equity when selling. That's what we're all about, keeping more money in your back pocket when you're selling. But it's not unique to mortgage stress. And of course, people in different stages of their property journey can benefit from keeping more money in their pocket as well. If they're upgrading, well, maybe you want to take more of your current equity into your new place, and you've got a larger deposit to keep going in that direction. Maybe you're downsizing and you want to give more money to your kids. The bank and mum and dad seems to be a popular sort of avenue these days. Maybe you want to grow your deposit in retirement. Maybe you want to carry your egg forward. Whatever you want to do, we think you should save more money when you're selling. Some of the resources, I guess, that sort of we drew some data points from, particularly in the start of the presentation there, of course, our contact details. And that's basically it, Martin. That wraps up our summary, what Bright Agent is, how it works, how we help you find local agents, some of the benefits in terms of not having to take days off work or move interstate or open up your property to get those quotes starting to come into you. You can make apples for apples comparisons, and ultimately we can help you save money when you're selling.
Yeah, so I just have one question before we close, and that is, so far as the agents are concerned, do you vet them or analyze them in any way, their history or whatever, or are they just paying the fee and coming on the platform because they're agents?
Yeah, we do in terms of getting their agent license number, their contact details, company information, how long they've been working, that sort of thing. And we can cross-check that against the regulatory state-based databases. So, look, I would encourage everybody to make sure they're dealing with a licensed agent, whether they find that agent through our service or whether they find that agent, of their own accord. They can certainly look up those details if they're engaging with an agent in our service.
Cool. Well, I want to say, Aaron, thanks very much for bringing that to our attention. Very interesting service that you provide. And I know you're expanding quite fast across Australia, which is great. And the links and things are there below. I'll put them in the comments as well so that people can follow up. And all power to your elbow. My belief is that those people selling property and those people buying property need to be more empowered with better tools. And this sounds like a good one.
Perfect, Martin. And we'd be more than happy to answer any comments as well, either in the chat or via email or social media or whatever.
Terrific. Thanks, Aaron. Congratulations. And keep me informed as to how it goes. Very interesting.
Thank you. Will do.
Take care.